Of course, no time in history has ever been perfect. You can agree with that.
Yes.
But if you suffer from anxiety and are looking for help, the current time compared to the past isn't that bad, especially if you're a woman. Why? Because men are historically the worst. Just the worst. And I'm not talking out of school. Everyone kind of knows this, except for jerks that have tiki torches.
Yeah.
They're the worst.
They're the worst.
And I wanted to bring up something that I think some people will know a certain about. I did a little bit of more research and learned about it. What do you know about the idea of female hysteria, Pete?
I don't know a whole lot, although I did go to a play once that was about the first vibrator. Does that count?
Yes, it is very much involved. And until now, I didn't know if we could say the word vibrator. Good to know.
Oh, check that off the list.
We'll get to that later. Yes, it was an actual medical diagnosis for hundreds of years. Would you like to know the symptoms?
Sure.
They include faintness, nervousness, sexual desire, lack of sexual desire, insomnia, heaviness in the abdomen, shortness of breath, irritability, loss of appetite for food, or, quote, a tendency to cause trouble. And it was all for females.
It sounds like it was a diagnosis for not having a vibrator.
Right. It was pretty much it was a delivery device for misogyny. Yay! Now, yes, we will get to the V word that you keep saying over and over again. But what I didn't know,
does it make you uncomfortable, Tom? Is there a?
It does not. I'm just getting used to it.
Anxiety.
I had written around it because I didn't know. I don't know. We're still figuring this podcast. I know it's episode 8, but this is just uncharted territory. Let me just put it online. Vibrator feels good.
Feels good.
I always pictured the idea of female hysteria and, the vapors and the fainting couch to be connected to Victorian times, a time of really great repression. What I learned is the idea of female hysteria dates back to 1900 BC. Right? Misogyny for the win. Back in ancient Egypt, the first descriptions of hysteria within the female body were found recorded on the Kaihun Papyri, which is a collection of ancient Egyptian texts discussing a bunch of stuff, but a part of it was mathematical and also medical topics. And then later in Plato, we all know Plato, right? Legendary smart guy. In his dialogue, Timaeus, he compared a woman's uterus to a living creature that wanders throughout a woman's body, just out on a stroll, blocking passages, obstructing breathing, and causing disease. And this concept of a pathological wandering womb was later viewed as potentially the source of the term hysteria itself, because the Greek cognate of uterus is hystera. So it obviously comes from way back. We wanted to make sure that women were guilty of a lot of stuff. This idea of the uterus causing all the problems, of course, led much later and very horribly to women having their uteruses removed. Thus the term hysterectomy.
Removing the hysteria.
Exactly, removing the hysteria.
Oh,
having your uterus removed in current days is an actual procedure, but we don't do it because it has a tendency to cause trouble. We do it for actual medical concerns. Thank goodness. Now, there's good news. We were learning so much stuff throughout history that the diagnosis changed, because up in the 17th century, luckily, it was blamed on demons and demonic possession.
That makes much more sense.
Right? So much better.
Yeah.
And then in the 18th century, the supposed cause of hysteria moved from the uterus to the brain. So that's good. So at least it's getting around the idea of having a mental problem. But of course, they were categorized as being mentally ill. And that led some women being forced to enter insane asylums, or as they like to call them then, sanatoriums, which sounds even more terrifying for some reason.
Really terrifying, yeah.
And it goes on from there. Actually, George Beard, who we talked about before, he came up with the term Americanitis. He was the father of American psychology, and he came up with a list of 75 different diagnoses that could be attributed to female
was one
hysteria.
of them a witch?
Oh, I'm sure. It was periodic witchness.
It's female hysteria. She must be a witch.
Yes.
And if she floats, she's a duck.
Right. Anytime that you were going against what was either perceived as normal, or you were turning down your husband's advances, or anything, it could all be put under the fact that clearly you were hysteric. And then, yes, before the mental part came into the picture, using the V word, yes, that actually, it was the diagnosis of hysteria that, here's some good news, came up with the invention of the vibrator, because doctors decided that women needed a certain kind of release. in order to release the hysteria into the, I don't know, universe. I don't know where the hysteria went. But so there was all sorts of fun doctor visits as far as that's concerned. This is all gross and disgusting, and I hate history.
Yeah.
It does make me feel better about the time we're in. And on the other side of it, the good thing is, lucky for us, the male sex organs have never once caused a problem in history. So keep it up, men, literally and figuratively. Welcome to What's That Smell? A sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxieties. I'm Tommy Metz III.
And I'm Pete Wright.
And every week we each drag out one of our deepest, darkest anxieties into the light to share it, learn about it,
and hopefully laugh about it with all of you. Reach out, send us your story of anxiety to somethingstinky@rashpixel.fm. Again, somethingstinky@rashpixel.fm. And with that, Tommy, I'd like to go first. Do you wonder this is episode 8, Tommy. We've been talking about our anxieties now for a long time. Do you start to wonder, or have you ever wondered, why you don't have anxiety about some things?
I don't know. That almost seems like a jinx. I don't believe in jinxes personally, but I don't go searching for things. Why do you ask?
Well, I have a story, and it's very brief, that doesn't relate really at all to the anxiety that I want to talk about today. But I feel like I have to get it off my chest because I should, by all rights, have an anxiety about this thing. I was riding a horse. I was a young lad on a horse. You know, I've told you before, I come from a long line of horse people.
Yeah.
And we were on the ranch in Oklahoma. I am, and I was with my father was on another horse, and his uncle was on another horse, and we were out riding the ranch. And as we're bringing the horses back into the barn, I was probably, I want to say 12.
Okay.
And another horse that was wandering around the pen comes up behind my horse and mounts it.
Oh no! Well,
with
you're
me
still
on it. Yeah. So there I am, plastered between these horses, and the horse above.
Hey, Pete, just talk a little slower. Keep going. It's not weird, right? Just paint a picture. Put on some music. Okay, go ahead.
The horse above me is going to town, and I have legs his legs are kind of on my shoulders and kind of down, struggling to get down on the shoulders of the horse that I'm on. I am sandwiched between
his legs are
these
up
two
on
horses.
Your shoulders.
Yes. Well, yeah. And so, and you have to see, like, my dad and his uncle are in hysterics. Like, they know there is something that's really traumatic going on right in front of them.
But they can't help themselves.
But they can't help themselves because they know immediately that that's going to become a bucket list story that they will tell forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Now, I, to this day, love horses. I rode for years after that. I adore horses. They are giant with such power, and with a swift kick, they could kill me.
Yeah.
And yet I call them friend. Why don't I have an anxiety about these giant beasts?
Why didn't that make some sort of an imprint?
Yes. And yet, this one little, tiny, totally normal thing has such an immediate physiological effect on me. In fact, 1 in 10 people share my plight here. 1 in 10 people gets that racing heart, hot flash, dizziness, nausea when they have to face it. 1 in 10 people have to confront the question, Tom. They have to ask themselves if it's actually worth it to go to the doctor if they have to face a needle.
Yes. Okay.
I hate needles so hard. I hate them hard.
Did a needle ever try to mount you? No, because then you'd be fine. Then you'd call that needle friend.
No, it's the thing is, though, this is like more than any of the other things that we've talked about. This is one that I had to back pocket because I had to work up to it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not just that I hate them. It's that when I see them and when they're targeted at me, I straight up pass out.
Oh, you're one of those.
I am.
Right. Do you have to see the blood or you just see the needle? I know that there's levels of when people pass out when that happens.
If I go silent, it's because I have passed out while talking about it.
Oh, okay.
I
so
can
even
feel my heart racing
on the ride to the doctor's office. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's if I know it's coming, I get the hot flash and my pulse quickens and it's pretty terrifying. And it started as a kid. Like I think it started when I went into what was ultimately supposed to be a very normal sort of surgical procedure, but back then it was overnight. I don't know if they still do that anymore. I had to get my tonsils out, and so I had to go to the hospital and check in, and they put me under, and they went in and did the tonsils, and then I had to stay at the hospital. Well, in trying to get a drip, right, trying to get the anesthesia in,
yep,
they kept missing the veins, and so they had to stab the back of my.
You were there on everyone's first day.
It feels like it. They stabbed the back because they put it in the back of your hand for some of these. I don't know what makes them choose where they're going to do it. Who knows? But they went in the back of my hand on my right hand, and they tried that twice. They kept missing. They went in the back of my hand on my left hand. Oh no, they kept missing. This is all in the span of about 5 minutes. They're like jamming the back of my hands with these needles to try and get a drip. They finally got it working, but I feel like that was the start of it.
Sure.
And I don't think I ever quite recovered. And then I would start sliding. You'd have to go in for a blood draw, for the doctor. I would just slide out of the chair, just straight to the floor. I'd slide out of the chair. Eventually, they start laying me down, before they do that, before they approach me with a needle.
Were you sliding because you passed out or sliding as some bizarre way to escape? They'll never see this coming.
That would have been super smart. Yeah. No, just because I would lose it. I'd pass out.
Oh,
now, I don't have, some people suffer from, it's called a vasovagal syncope.
Ooh.
And the passing out part. And I don't have what's called a convulsive vasovagal syncope. And convulsive can be either epileptic or non-epileptic. And this is just related to the needle phobia that happens. And so God, man, you have life insurance. Do you have life insurance, Tom?
I do.
I'd like to tell you about a plan.
Okay.
Look, they send somebody to your house. At least for ours, they send somebody to our house, like a roving blood draw, a roving phlebotomist, to come to your house to take blood for your life insurance physical. At least they did for us. It was very convenient. It was great. Except for I'm sitting at my kitchen table and she tries to draw blood and she approaches me with the needle and I go down. I pass out. And in that process, I will never forget, I had a dream or like a life flashed before my eyes, but it wasn't my own. It was the administrative assistant's life who worked at the company that I worked for at the time. And I happened to have been holding or looking at a Christmas card that she'd sent us with a kind of collage of photos. And so I was suddenly in her life, living those memories as I was passing out while they were trying to get blood.
What?
How ridiculous. Like that is such a clear memory for me.
What is that?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know what that means. It's just weird, right? That's a weird thing.
What if that's what death was like? At the very end, you're like, I wonder what my mailman is seeing. That sucks. I had like some sort of a montage with music or something. All right. But go ahead. Yeah.
What was so funny about that whole experience is that, in fact, afterwards, she did get the blood, but she told me, she said, don't worry, I had to use the infant needle.
Oh.
The infant needle. I'm a grown-ass man, Tom.
The infant needle. That's adorable. Oh, no, I want an infant needle.
You can't have one. You don't get the infant needle. Look, this actually is kind of serious. I didn't go to the dentist for 18 years.
But wait, how often are they... What? Wait, first, I'm sorry, I was jumping. For 18 years, do you still have teeth?
Yeah, right. That's actually why I went, because I was having some serious tooth pain. And that is what they call end-stage needle phobia.
Ooh.
Can you piece that puzzle together? It's when you have a treatable condition that has become very serious, or in many cases, life-threatening, that you have avoided going to the doctor because of needle phobia for so long that your health is to a point where we could help you if you would just do this, and you're forced to get to move through the needle phobia. It's called end-stage needle phobia. And for me, I was getting to the point where I was having some serious dental pain.
Can I ask 2 follow-up questions?
You may.
Is now a good time?
It is.
Number 1, about the dentist. You were afraid of the dentist. Does a drill give you the same kind of feeling as a needle?
Nope.
No, it's just a needle. So you were afraid that they would have
to
put you under or give you Novocaine or something like that, which is all needle related.
I'm not going to lie to you. This is a totally side story, but I think my childhood dentist
Oh,
was kind of a charlatan.
really? The audience can't hear us, right? Because we're talking like this. No one can hear us? Okay, good.
No one
Yeah.
can hear us. He gave me a filling every time I went in. Every single time. My mouth is full of metal.
Really?
And so that's part of...
So he bought too many fillings.
Yes. He needed to
get
use
rid of
those.
These fillings are going bad.
I think I had so many shots that I associated. Once I developed this sort of needle phobia thing,
Sure.
and started passing out, I reassociated needles with the dentist. I was like, no, thank you. I don't like those anywhere, let alone in my mouth.
That makes sense.
And so I had to get over that part, but not without a long conversation with my dentist about this.
You check his pockets to see if they're filled with fillings. Look, Doc, I get the racket. I've been around.
No. So anyway, that's my dentist thing. What's your other question?
Well, I wanted to go and let me know if this gets too creepy, but are you able to nail down what you are afraid of? Is it the pain? Is there anything involved with something being injected into or taken out of your body?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Okay.
It is less severe for me with injections and more severe with draws. But I don't have necessarily, like when I see blood or when I scrape myself and I'm bleeding or when I cut myself, like I'm able to move through that pretty quickly.
So it's not just blood. Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
It is that combination of somebody reaching into my skin and taking out something that does not belong to them.
So you're just
as a thing, I can't watch movies with needles. I have to hide my eyes from needles in movies. That is a frustrating experience. The question for me is, why do people pass out with this needle phobia? Because that is unique to this phobia. It is unique above and beyond. I'd love to say all other phobias, but most other phobias and other types of fear. Passing out is not necessarily associated with it, because fear, when you're afraid of something, it makes your heart beat faster and your blood pressure rises. Fainting is caused by a drop in blood pressure, reducing blood flow to the brain.
Oh, it's not just everything gets up to such a fever pitch that the brain says you need to take a break and shut you down?
No, and that's what's so interesting about it. That those two things should not, it's like high jump, low ceiling. You should not do these things. They shouldn't exist in the same space.
Right.
Professor Andrew Page, thank goodness he comes up from University of Western Australia, and he's been studying just this very stuff. He says, if you look at what happens when you're losing a lot of blood, like if you get an injury, you get a reduction in blood flow coming back to the heart. So the heart says, I'm going to stop pumping hard because I don't want to push all the remaining blood out of the body.
Because it's not trapped.
Yes. So one explanation that he says is pretty sound is that this is your body's natural mechanism to reduce blood flow when you are injured, right? That your body just knows blood is leaving, so I'm going to reduce blood pressure. And people who suffer from the fainting part of it, their blood pressure can't respond quickly enough to keep them lucid.
Okay, but so are you, by that same definition, if you're telling your brain that blood is leaving, because the stuff that's taken out in a like if you're having blood drawn isn't very much.
Right.
So I'd be surprised if your brain could immediately go, oops, I sense a little bit of a drop, let's shut everything down, versus is it you telling your brain heart connection that this is happening?
It has to be somewhat psychosomatic, right? I just don't know. I mean, the wonders of the body that we don't know, right?
But that's fascinating that you're having that kind of talk, and then you have such a physiological response.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess we do that all the time, but wow, that's really interesting.
And it gets more complicated with the secondary fear, that fainting can also create this secondary fear where you begin to fear you'll faint as much as you fear the needle itself. And that makes it even more difficult to overcome. So I don't like it one bit. I don't like thinking about it. Here's the thing.
Shake it up.
So treatment is sort of lame and terrifying and worse than almost passing out. I would rather pass out than be treated. But I know that unlike the water conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, right? I'm okay not being exposed to rivers and lakes. I really am fine on land.
Yeah.
This case, I had to and continue to have to fix the way that I experience needles because my health is at stake. So there are 3 common treatment options
in order to get over the anxiety.
Well, yeah, the first one is really to try to get over the anxiety of it. And it's very hard to do because Frankly, people who are needle phobics don't go to the doctor very much, right?
Right.
So the medical community has not a great idea of how to even handle this, right? So it's been very difficult to sort of see improvement, even though it does impact a lot of people. A relatively large percentage of the population struggles with this. The first is what they call graded exposure. Right. So exposing on a grade, the slow and steady introduction of needles.
This connects a little bit to our VR
Yep,
thing.
it does. It does. Or the Quit Center,
Okay,
right?
go
Yeah.
ahead.
So you start with this slow
exposure.
sort of exposure. It starts with maybe it's pictures of needles that you're looking at. You have to look at them and stare at them and run your fingers over them. Then you are introduced to needles. You are introduced to the real needle, and you have to touch it and hold it in your hand. You have to look at it. You have to see other people being touched by them, right? So you watch other people as
you have
needles.
to go on a date with a needle.
Right, you buy it dinner first.
Yeah.
And then you have to watch other people being injected. The ultimate goal, once you get through all those steps, is that you are able to be injected themselves. And I read this story about this woman who's been through this treatment, and she went from being broke and destitute because she was terrified of needles, going to the doctor, her health was failing, and now she is a nurse assistant in a dentist's office and has to prep needles every day. And she said, if without this treatment, I wouldn't have a job, let alone this job. But the fact that exposure therapy has gotten me to this job is pretty delightful. So it was an interesting story. The next level of treatment is for those who have the passing out problem. The syncope is called applied tension. So if you're fainting, you tense the body's large muscles and push blood pressure up to resist blacking out.
Is that like your legs and your arms?
Yeah, so
I'm
you
doing it right now. Your stomach?
flex, and then hopefully you do that right before they give you the injection, and that'll keep you from passing out, because the syncope is a dangerous thing. It's a really dangerous thing. We have a needle in your arm and you risk falling and hitting your head. Like it can be a very serious condition, and so you want to be prepared for that. And the third recommendation is find another doctor. Right? If needle phobics go to the doctor with this lower frequency challenge, if you go to a doctor that says, well, you're just going to have to get over that, which is a common refrain, then you need to go to find somebody in a medical community that actually has that can empathize,
with that kind of
and has been trained, and in fact, training has apparently gotten much better. That there are training communities and nursing communities that are teaching how to do this with the needle phobic in mind.
Do you have out where you are? There's a lot of them out here. Apparently, a dentist that just puts you to sleep. There's advertisements all over, or maybe it's just all by my apartment, but that the whole idea is that if you have a dental phobia, you go in and no matter what it is, they're just taking a look, they're giving you a cleaning, you're out.
Yeah.
They put you out, not with a needle, they put something over your nose.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff.
put the gas on. Yeah.
Gas, yeah. And they gas you out, and then you wake up, and I don't know which I'm more scared about. The idea of walking into a room and someone jumping at me with needles, or just saying, hey, you just met me, I take your insurance. Goodbye for half an hour. I'll take over from here. I'm not sure.
I have been gassed once at the dentist's office, and it was for, I don't even remember what the procedure was, but I do remember that I started singing the song that the Bring Out Your Dead guy sings in Monty Python. I'm so happy. And I started singing that and trying to control my own gas levels, and they had to actually restrain me. So not a great candidate, but I love the idea.
Pete,
Tom,
I'm about to tell you a very short but very harrowing tale. In the year of our Lord 2014, a young male was found wandering the streets of the San Fernando Valley on the 4th of July. He seemed to be afraid of the fireworks that were going off. He couldn't say his name, he didn't know where he lived, and no one seemed to be looking for him. Eventually, he was taken in by an agency who guessed that he was about only 1 year old at the time. The agency did their best to find his family, but no luck. And after he was in the system for a while, they began to try and find him a new family. He was taken in as a foster, with the person only agreeing to keep him for about 4 months maximum, or less if he was able to find a forever home. Less than 2 months later, he was adopted by that same person who decided his was the forever home that was needed. And the best part is that young male came with his own crate to sleep in. Of course, as everyone will have guessed by now, that young male that I'm talking about is my dog, Foster.
Do you have a phobia of your dog Foster or foster children?
And I was the one, wait for it, and I was the one who rescued him. But, sometimes I feel like sometimes he rescued me.
Oh.
Okay. If you know me, you know that my pup Foster is my sidekick, and he brings me an immense amount of joy. But as Spider-Man once said, with great joy comes great anxiety. I do not read comics. And so this is my anxiety for this week. Am I giving my dog a good enough life? Am I accidentally ruining him in some way? This is my anxiety for this week. It is, of course, not debilitating. Foster gives me some of the most joy that I've had in my life. But with that, as I said, there's got to be anxiety that comes with that. Let me talk about it a little bit. I look into his eyes, and it's some of the basics. It gives me anxiety that I can't fully understand him and give him whatever he wants, or sometimes have to force him to do things he doesn't want, and I can't explain to him why I can't. Sometimes he seems like he's really bored. Sometimes he just sort of stares at me weirdly with what my friend Irina calls murder eyes, which is it's not like he's angry, but it's just this cold, weird stare where he's just sort of staring, and I can picture him thinking about all the knives in the house. There's a very good chance that I shouldn't have anxiety for this, and there are some mitigating factors that help with this. Mitigating factor number one, he usually seems pretty happy. He gets plenty of walks. He has dog friends. He has plenty of toys. And I don't work full normal hours in an office, so I'm around him a lot more than maybe other dog owners can be around their dogs. Uh-huh. That's good. Uh-huh. Mitigating number two, there's a good chance I'm worrying too much and giving him too much credit, because for as smart as he can be, he's also often an idiot. An example that I have is, I call these tricks. One of his favorite tricks is many times he has we've been out walking, and he's seen the shadow of a bird flying over him on the sidewalk. And he chases the shadow along the ground, which he cannot catch because it's a shadow, and he runs straight into a garbage can. And then he sort of falls over and looks at me like, why have you let this happen?
This is on you.
This is on you. Another example, and this happens, it doesn't happen as much since when he was a puppy, but when and I apologize for the language, when he scrunches over to use the restroom, he also pees in his own face because he's scrunched over in that kind of squatty potty form, and he lets go of the first part and it goes in his face. And again, he looks at me like, this is not how this is supposed to be.
I learned this from watching you, Dad.
Exactly. But with all of that evidence, there are some things that are going on in that his separation anxiety is getting worse. A lot of times, sometimes in the mornings, he shakes and doesn't eat if he thinks I might be leaving. He just sort of follows me around or follows me with his eyes until he is somehow convinced, no, I'm staying for at least the morning. For a while after I would leave, he would sleep on the big bed. That's my bed while I was gone, which filled me with glee. But right now he's waiting. I sneak up to the front door and I open it real quick, and he's waiting right there on the hardwood floor. I've brought his bed over. He doesn't use it. He's just waiting by the door. And I hate that stuff because that makes it seem like he's not living his full life. And I have to assume it's something that I'm doing. He's picking up on some social cues, or I'm messing something up. And I worry about that kind of stuff. I worry, am I accidentally ruining my dog somehow?
Why do you have to assume that? Like you said, I have to assume that I'm doing something. Why do you have to assume that?
One of the reasons is because, as I use the word social cues, he is very good at picking up on those. That I learned early on at one point that if I put on this one t-shirt and this certain pair of shorts in the morning, he will leap about in glee and then run over and start eating his food. It was then I realized over the past 2 days, because I was just staying at home, I'd worn the same t-shirt and pair of shorts. So he was able to equate that with my dad staying home. For someone that's peeing in his own face, he picked that up after like 2 days.
He's probably smarter than that. It's probably what he's actually doing is coming into the bedroom in the morning, and he's like licking you in just the right way so that you put on that shirt and shorts. And he's jumping about because what he's really saying is, I'm still in control. I still did this. His mind is mine. What an idiot. He'll be peeing in his own face in no time.
When I am leaving sometimes, and he knows, okay, he's leaving, he does try to convince me. He like runs over the door, and like I've got like a briefcase, my version of a briefcase in my hand, and he's like, "Yep, just us going out like we both do to work." And I'm like, "Nope, you got to go." And he's like, "I don't think you're wrong." And he'll run over to where his leash is, and is like, "You forgot something." So he does definitely think that he's in control at times until I put him in his crate.
But the real question is what this does to you, because you want a relationship with your dog. You don't want a, relationship with your dog. Like this is changing. If it's something that causes you anxiety, then right. I mean, it's something you need to figure out.
Right. I mean, and again, the joy way outweighs the anxiety. So it's not like I'm rocking back and forth about my dog. But that being said, and I actually wanted to ask you, because Pete, you have actual children.
I do.
How do you handle it?
Well,
do you? I would think that fatherhood, especially in early. How old are your kids? If you're
11 and 15.
11 and 15. So up to 11, that's based on nothing. Did you ever feel anxiety of what am I? I mean, you are their portal to the world. Did you ever have any worry of what am I doing? Am I messing up? I mean, I would think that for me, that would be really serious because I'm feeling it about a dog.
Yeah. I absolutely did, and still do, because now, now that they're older, I'm sort of done. Like my job as they're teenagers is to pretty much keep them fed until they can pay for their own food, right? Keep them healthy and alive until they move out. Yeah. But I'm not changing the way they think at this point. That's coming from so many other sources. And so if they do something I don't like, it means I've really failed.
So you do take that.
And it's way too late.
And it's too late. Okay.
Yeah.
What about when they were in the formative years? Was that ever on your mind?
Part of it just comes as a source of that constant aching trauma that and wonder that you're just everything you do there's a right or a wrong. And this was much more apparent with my first child, that that there was a chance I could screw up at any given choice, at any given fork in the road. And what I learned through that experience and with my second child, and I think you'd find this similar to other parents, is that it turns out every fork that feels like a binary decision is actually 1,000 different choices that you could make, and there is no right or wrong. There's just gradients of safety, and if you keep that in mind, like keep fed and healthy and strong and active, all the other stuff will just sort of smooth out in the end, just through being in your experience. And so I it's funny that you equate it to the children. I have to also equate it to my dog, like my experience with my dog. Maybe I'm less concerned about that, about the same sorts of anxieties that you're talking about because of my experience with my kids.
That's what I would think, is because there's something so much, not that dogs are not valuable, but I'm not one of those people that's like, a dog is a child.
No, yeah, right. No, but yeah, there is something real to this idea that, I'll tell you, for me, we rescued our dog from a situation that was just, it was ugly. The dog came up from Texas and was in a foster with way too many dogs, and it was scrawny and flea ridden. And so the dog in our house is loved and taken care of and healthy and clean and strong. And all of the other things that appear to be like, you're not going to leave me. I know you're putting socks on in order to put your shoes on in order to take me places, right? Right. I know that that's the presumptive argument. And when that doesn't happen, yeah, okay, maybe I get a chicken treat out of the deal as I go sob by the window alone. But I just am able to kind of let that go, because I know when we come home, it's so much appreciably better than the experience that the dog had in the first place.
It's a good point. No, that's a good point. No, that makes a lot of sense.
I'm trying to help, man. I'm trying to help.
I talked to our friend Joy, a really good friend who is a professional animal trainer.
Oh, that's right. Because you live in fancy dancy LA, and there are every 10th person is an animal trainer. So you have access to these kinds of weird resources.
Yes. I don't know if every 10th person is an animal trainer, but definitely involved with the arts or the industry.
Yes.
She trains. I guarantee that everyone listening to this has seen one of her dogs, cats. She's trained bears before in commercials, movies, television, everything. She's great. And Foster, of course, loves her. Her point to take away, and how this is universal and goes to what you were saying, is to take away the importance on non-importance things. That past dogs, that's something anyone with anxiety should try to relate to.
Yeah.
that if you love one side of things but dread the other, maybe take a look at the plus or minus of what you're getting out of that situation. And again, take away the importance of non-important things. As you said, is he safe, fed, walked, warm, socialized, and has stuff to do?
Mhm.
Yes, 100%. And that's better than being running around on the streets, not be able to say his name because he was a dog on the 4th of July. Is he still a bit goosey sometimes? So be it, because Pete, I'm fed and safe and walked and warm and socialized and have stuff to do. And I'm on a podcast about anxiety. It's okay, because overall, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
That's why we're able to laugh about this stuff, because it's not we try to learn about things, but it's not a serious mental health. If anyone is listening to this for serious mental health issues,
Please don't.
Please go back to the iTunes Apple Podcast Store. You're making a horrible mistake. Try not to let the small stuff take over your life. Think about the important stuff as much as you possibly can. And I know that that's such a easy Band-Aid to put over things, but it does put things into perspective, that I have a bundle of wagging joy looking at me and looking to me for guidance and love every day. And the dumb part of me wants to tear part of it down and try to poke at it to find anxiety. And I'm able to make the decision as much as I can to let some of that go and just enjoy the good parts, because that's the important stuff.
Until the murder eyes.
Yeah, until the murder eyes, until he forces me to pee in my own face.
Stick around for a glimpse into next week's show. But first,
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Oh, I love Audible. Get a free audio book download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/scent of a podcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Tommy, I've got the book this week, and I know when I say it, it's going to be something that you're going to think is a real downer, but I encourage you to just stay with me because this is one of those power books, and I bring it up because in the process, there are needles involved, so this is part of my own actualization. The book is Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End by Atul Gawande. Now, Atul Gawande is a practicing surgeon, and this book is his sort of love letter to the profession, where he argues that quality of life is a desired goal for everyone, patients and families, and we need to rethink the whole system. And when we say we're going to rethink the whole system of life, we have to approach the end of life differently. And I adore his approach to this. It is it's a mature book. It's a book for people who are ready to think deeply about compelling issues that will guaranteed impact every single one of us. Atul Gawande.
Is there a pop-up version? For you, the listeners of What's That Smell? Audible is offering, again, a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial. That's 30 days to try this super fun book that Pete's talking about.
In a row, though. You could listen in a row. It's not like every third day. It's 30 straight days of end of life, right? Sometimes when you have to ask, is it is it open 24 hours in a row?
Right.
You have to know. I want to be sure. That's part of the deal. All 30 days.
Good point.
You can't break it up.
Visit www.audibletrial.com/scent of a podcast. And today's tune is Doodah by Gran Torino.
We don't pay to advertise this show, so we appreciate you sharing it with others you think would be interested. And how you share it, we don't care. Email, talk to them on the street, yell it from the windows.
Share it on Facebook.
You could share it on Facebook. That's a great way to do it. And since we're a new show, those 5-star reviews in iTunes and Apple Podcasts really help others to discover what we're doing here. So if you like what you've heard, if you think that we've said something or talked about a subject that has touched you in some way, share the love with a review and a comment, and pass the show on to a friend.
It really helps you guys, and we really appreciate it. Okay, now, coming up next week...
Deep breathing is for suckers.
We're taking on breathing now? It's like having food on your face, and no one tells you, but for years, Pete.
Yeah, like decades.
Like you have pizza, and then 10 years later, they go, by the way, you have pizza on your head. What are you doing with your life? Rethink things.
It's actually being studied by smart people.
Oh, smart people.
And they're Canadians.
Ah, smart Canadians.
You know what?
Until then, I'm Tommy Metz III.
I'm Pete Wright. Thank you for downloading. We'll be back next week on What's That Smell?